This program is part of the Cosmic Potato Podcast Network. For more shows like this, visit our website at cosmicpotatonetwork.com.
Watching television, watching television. Watching television, watching television. I need all the image, I need all the sound. I know the info right into my mind.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Trial by Pilot. This is the show where we judge an entire series of television and the work of hundreds on one episode. I'm Bill Lynch.
And I'm Elizabeth Lynch.
Today we are talking about Foundation on Apple TV Plus.
Yes. Did you know anything about this before we watched it? Had you heard of this before?
I had heard of it, yes.
Okay, I had not.
It is based on a very famous, perhaps the most famous science fiction books of all time.
Okay, yeah, so that's what our friend told me. I didn't realize, I assume everything's based on a book, but like that is like the science fiction book.
Yeah.
So I did not realize that.
Yeah, we wanted to have someone on that had actually read the books, but I don't know if he checks Messenger.
We saw.
So he's not here. Yeah, these are based on a series of novels by Isaac Asimov, originally written starting in 1942.
Oh, wow.
They were a trilogy for like 30 years, and then he started to add books to the series. Mm-hmm. It won the Hugo Award in 1966 for the best all-time series, and then like a bunch of awards after that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I had literally never heard of this book ever.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm surprised because you're really big into sci-fi books.
Well, you would think that, like, I've heard of Lord of the Rings, but maybe that's because, no, I heard of it before that was a movie.
Lord of the Rings?
Yeah. So.
Or at least The Hobbit.
Yeah. But this I had never heard of.
Yeah.
I don't know. Something's that famous in its genre, but.
Yeah.
Although, do I know the most famous book in every genre? Probably not.
I certainly do not.
Yeah, so.
Just the smutty ones. So, this has been in production for a while. I saw that they had casted Jared Harris, who, I love.
You love a Jared Harris project. I didn't realize as soon as I saw him, I'm like, oh, that is why Bill wanted to watch this.
You just know it's going to be a well-produced show if he's in it.
It's just funny that
because he doesn't take on shitty projects. Let's just put it that way.
No, but he takes on very the same role all the time. Because at first I was like, oh, is he gonna be like the mean guy in this? I thought he was mean at first, and then I was like, oh no, he's the victim. He's a victim.
I don't know if I would say he's the victim. Also, he doesn't take on the same role. You're just saying that because he's like a 60-year-old white guy who like always looks and kind of sounds the same.
This
it's
is
different
not.
roles.
No. This is not a criticism of Jared Harris. I want to make that clear.
Good.
Okay. I'm not criticizing him. I think he's very good. I just think that like in a lot of things we've seen him in, he's like this like has to end up being some kind of a I don't know. Maybe victim is the wrong word, but he's like the one who's like ultimately like doing the right thing or like I don't know, standing up to the government or something.
What about in Mad Men?
Well, in Mad Men, he wasn't standing up to the government, but I feel like he was kind of put upon.
Okay.
Maybe
so you take Jared Harris's name out of your mouth.
Maybe Mad Men doesn't track here, but just
he was great in Mad Men.
I'm not saying this is not a criticism of Jared Harris at all. It's just like I think that he kind of has this like hero. I don't know.
Sure. Well, we also don't know what his motivations really are in this show yet.
Of course,
maybe they're
we're
nefarious.
watching the pilot.
Right.
Yeah.
So the pilot starts off with a woman narrating about her childhood, learning of all the different planets within this giant galactic empire. And
still can't wrap my head around something like this.
Oh yeah, it's
That they're
insane.
like communicating with other planets or traveling to other planets. Same thing with Battlestar Galactica. Same thing, I guess, with Star Wars. Like,
Yeah.
it's just
Oh yeah, this is even far beyond Battlestar Galactica. I think they said
Yeah.
like there were 8 trillion people like spread across this empire.
yeah,
Terminus is the planet that's furthest from like the center of the empire. It's on like the far outskirts of civilization. Like there's not even human settlements there at this point.
this is like the District 12.
Yeah. But we see on Terminus 4 children approaching this mysterious vault. And we find out later that this is actually set slightly in the future from the rest of the story.
Right.
That's why there are humans there now.
Yeah,
And it's this like strange floating like sculptural looking thing.
yeah, it's like a diamond, like 2 pieces.
Yeah.
you know,
And
looks like the Sims
Yeah, it does.
little thing that I don't know what you call that.
Nobody knows why it's there. That's on Terminus now. But it puts off this like strange energy that keeps people away from it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, people like try to get as close as they can to like plant a little flag just for like bragging rights. And so one of the boys, after he's like trying to put this flag in, passes out. Mm-hmm. And his friends like run back to town for help. But this woman shows up and pulls him away from the energy and warns him like, stay away from it.
Yeah. And does he say that she's been close to it?
Yes, she holds the record for being
Oh,
closest.
she holds the record.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then we visit Trantor, which is like the capital of the empire. And we meet Jared Harris's character, Harry Seldon, who is a professor and mathematician, and a younger man there that works with him who is concerned about something. Mm-hmm. And he's asking Harry, like, are you sure this is the only way to get this done? So something's on the horizon. Mm-hmm. And then we travel again to Synax, and we meet Gail, who is leaving her family there to head to Trantor to work with Harry Seldon. Mm-hmm. And on her voyage there, she's talking with some guy, and she says, you know, I won a math contest, like a really, really big math contest, which is why she's going to work with him. Mm-hmm. And they go into a hyper jump, and like this like weird synthetic like netting comes over them
Yeah.
to like put them into hyperstasis. But she wakes up during the hyper jump, which you're not supposed to do. And so an android comes over and like injects her neck with something to put her back out.
Yeah. And it's like, why did you wake up? And like pushes her head down and like,
Yeah.
it's a little creepy.
And so she arrives at Trantor at like this docking station, like way out in the outer atmosphere.
This thing was cool.
Yeah. And there's just this gigantic elevator that takes them, basically an elevator that takes them 14 hours from this docking station down to the surface of the planet.
Yeah, I thought this was so cool. Like, at first I didn't realize that it was an elevator. I was like, oh, is this like a building? Like, I thought maybe it was a building with like different, like it was kind of like a city,
Yeah.
you know? But once I realized what they were doing, I was like, what a cool way to manage like all this travel in and out of this planet. Like, you're not like landing on the planet.
Right.
Everything's coming to this thing. It's like it's just very efficient, and I thought it was very, very cool.
And we find out that, you know, the empire is led by these clones of a former leader from like hundreds of years ago. Mm-hmm. And so they've cloned this guy a bunch of times. So it's this like genetic dynasty. Mm-hmm. And there's now 3 clones, like a young boy, a man, and then an older man. And they're called Brother Dawn, Day, and Dusk. Mm-hmm. You know, collectively referred to as Empire. And, you know, they live on the surface of the planet, but there are hundreds of subterranean levels where people are just working and building technology, and they never see the sky. They just like stay underground.
Like little mole people.
Yeah. It's just crazy to me now reading that this was written in 1942, like some of the cool ideas
Yeah.
that are in this show and book. And we see Brother Day, you know, like he's the main one. He's like, you know, in his prime, in his
Yeah.
like 20s or 30s. And he approaches this employee, like, I don't know if he was like painting something or sculpting something for the Empire.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, you know, we found a book of Harry Seldon's in your room. And he insists like, oh, you know, someone gave it to me. It's rubbish. All his ideas are rubbish. But then Brother Day has the man executed by space gun.
Like right there.
Yeah, you know, they
Yeah.
shoot something at him and he just like
No
combusts
warning.
into dust.
Yeah.
Apparently, Harry Seldon has ideas that are not favorable to the Empire. And so then Gale is introduced to Harry Seldon, along with his other assistant. And, they're talking about some mathematical theorem that she solved after no one could solve it for 500 years. This girl on this planet with, like, no technology.
Yeah, it almost seemed like they're not allowed to do any type of technology on her planet.
Yeah.
Like where she's from. Or they're like, how'd you find a book there? Like they look down on that.
Yeah, her planet is extremely religious. They have like prayer beads like sewn into their skin that she had to have removed when she left.
Oh, is that what they were doing?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And so, she's just some kind of like mathematical prodigy. So she solved this equation, and then Harry reveals why she's there. They're both going to be arrested tomorrow by the Empire to prove his predictions wrong. And so the field of mathematics he works in, takes these giant data sets from 8 trillion people in the Empire and predicts big changes that are coming. And so he's predicting that the Empire is going to fall, basically, and that Trantor is going to be destroyed.
Which I thought this was kind of cool because I was recently listening to something about climate change, and I don't understand this technology and how they even do it now to predict climate change. But I just thought it was cool because they're like, oh, using this model or that model, all these different models that we currently use now to predict anything is mind-boggling to me. So it's kind of cool they were doing the same thing. I guess in the 40s they did that too, but at a much different level. So this is kind of cool, the way this author even imagined this.
Yeah.
And the way they illustrated it in the show was cool too.
Yes. Yeah, there must be so many sci-fi and fantasy ideas that have been pulled from this. Because Minority Report, right, was predicting killers. I'm sure it's been done many times.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, 2 delegations from distant planets are visiting the Empire to try and avoid a war with each other. And Brother Day, accepts gifts from them as he welcomes them to the Empire. And then everyone kind of creepily follows his mantra, respect and enjoy the peace. The idea is just everyone just stays peaceful and in line with what the Empire wants.
Right. Remain compliant and you will have no issues.
Right. And so then Gale and Harry are taken by the Empire for conspiracy to destabilize it, and they're brought before a tribunal. And, I don't know if they call him a lawyer, but the guy arguing against them is saying, there are 8 trillion people in the Empire. It's been going strong for 12,000 years. And he's asking Harry about what his predictions are. And Harry, doesn't really hesitate or beat around the bush. He says, in less than 500 years, the Empire will be reduced to rubble. It will be intergalactic nuclear wars that last for 30,000 years. And his goal, basically, by revealing all this, is to soften these dark ages that are going to follow. He said they absolutely cannot be stopped. There's no way, but you can reduce them if we start acting now from 30,000 years to maybe 1,000. And so he's trying to create this galactic encyclopedia to restart humanity, a foundation for the next wave of people.
Yeah.
The titular foundation.
Got it in there.
It's been a while.
It's been 170 episodes since we had a titular incident.
I'm sure it hasn't been that long.
I'm just kidding. I was just trying to think of how you have those signs it's been blank days.
Yeah. You should have said 5 days and then you erase it and put 0.
Yeah. Well, I just,
Work on it for next time.
I know. Can we cut this and then let me redo it?
No.
Because I just don't know where 170 came from.
That's so long ago. We only have 180 episodes.
So it's definitely been 10 episodes maybe.
And so the next day, after Gale has been given a chance to look at Harry's formulas, she's asked at the tribunal about her findings. And after being badgered by this guy about her homeworld's anti-science agenda, Gale says, I think his calculations are correct. The math says the Empire is going to fall.
Yeah.
And so they're put back in their cells, and that night there's a terrorist attack that blows up the big space elevator.
Whew, this was really hard to watch.
Yeah, so
This was awful.
one person is like in the main docking building, and then the other person is on the elevator taking it down. And so it blows up, and the entire thing just falls to the planet. And I mean, obviously, it's fucking gargantuan.
Yeah, I mean, it takes 14 hours on an elevator that's fast to get to the planet. So,
Yeah.
like, how tall is this thing?
Yeah. And so you just see it start to like hit the surface of the planet, and it's like just crushing buildings and people. And the next day in the aftermath, the Empire reveals 100 million people were killed.
Yeah.
And it cut through 50 levels of the planet, like into the subterranean levels.
Yeah.
And so they bring back Gale and Selden in front of Brother Day, and Gale reveals she saw something else in the equations. If Harry Selden is killed by the Empire, within the year, the Emperors would be dead. So whatever chain of events would follow that, they would be killed. And maybe she's telling the truth. I don't remember if they revealed if she was telling the truth or just bullshitting to save Harry. Mm-hmm. And so Brother Dusk just like wants to kill them right there. And, you know, the little boy, Brother Dawn, doesn't really say much. But Day questions them and reveals later that they will be spared. So probably to spare himself.
Yeah.
And they will be allowed to work on the Foundation, but not on Trantor, on Terminus. And so, you know, Selden says, oh, so you can keep an eye on us and then steal the idea, all of our
Right.
stuff, you know, while we're out on this planet. But later he tells Gale, like, this was the plan all along.
Yeah.
Like,
She kind of figures that out. Like,
Yeah.
oh, you meant for this to happen.
yeah. He wants to be as far away from the Empire's eyes that he can get, but still be able to get their resources for
Yeah.
this project. And then we find out that these scenes on Terminus are 35 years later, after all this happens. And Gale is narrating and telling of this outlier, this woman who is able to approach the vault without like feeling its energy. And so Gale wonders if Selden knew all along what this woman would be capable of. And we see her climbing up a hill up to this strange vault, reaching up to like the bottom of it as like a light shines from within. And that was the end of the pilot to Foundation. What did you think?
Well, I am really glad that you did this summary here for me. Because honestly, in the beginning, I was like, oh, this is good. I'm following this. Like, I understand what's going on. And then as you are telling me this, I'm like, nope. Definitely missed a whole shit ton of that.
Listen, most of this podcast is really just for you to understand the shows we watch.
At least for sci-fi. But I was like, I'm like writing down, I'm like, okay, this is this planet. This is this planet. I'm getting their names and I'm like trying to keep track, but like
Yeah.
little like nuances that actually weren't nuances at all. And I think huge plot points.
Major plot points.
I definitely lost. But I did think that it was, even though I definitely missed some stuff, I think that they did a really good job of, I didn't feel lost when I was watching it.
Yeah.
So, like, I knew when they were switching from planets, time periods. I mean, they really only did the time period thing twice, but, like, I did kind of have an understanding of where everyone was. Where when we watched that one show where they had to, like, walk through that big, like, storm,
Yes.
and there was, like, two different sides. I never knew what side we were on. You know, like this, I think they did a really good job of creating all of these worlds. And so I thought that was very cool.
Yeah.
I felt a connection to the characters
That's good.
where sometimes I just don't. Like,
Yeah.
there wasn't anything ridiculous about this.
Yeah.
I didn't think that there was anything like silly or over the top. Like, I knew going in that we were watching sci-fi.
Right.
I had also heard right before we watched it from our friend that it was considered like the best sci-fi thing. And so and he said how much he liked it. He'd seen 2 episodes. He thought they were doing a great job. So like kind of going in, maybe I was like, okay, like give this a chance. You know, I mean, I obviously try to do that with everything, but
Yeah.
it did grab me.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't think I'll continue to watch it because I'm just still not interested in it. Like, this is just not it's not what I want to spend my time watching. Even though I think that what they're doing and what it is, they're doing a good job. It was not a bad pilot. I thought, as far as pilots go, this was a great pilot. I really do think that this is a really good pilot, introducing and setting up this world. I knew exactly what was happening. I didn't think that there were too many extra characters in there. I say I knew exactly what was happening. I didn't.
Close enough.
Right. But like, it wasn't so hard for me to follow that I was like, who's this? Why are they talking about that? Like,
Right.
the story was laid out well. There are some things, I've talked about this before when we're watching sci-fi, where like they expect you to like catch up really quickly and know what they're talking about, and language is different and what they're talking about is different. And so that makes it hard to follow. So that might be why I kind of like missed a few things, but I didn't feel lost watching it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's my assessment there.
Yeah, I was concerned at first because it was overwhelming. Like the first couple minutes, they jump from like 3 new planets. The first 3 minutes of the show is 3 planets.
Yeah.
And you're meeting all these characters, and I was like, oh man, this is going to be so much.
Oh, see, I felt like it was paced well. I did think it was paced well. Like I had time to catch up between each jump.
Yeah. And I think it ended up being fine.
Yeah.
But just them setting that pacing the way they did, I was like, if they keep going with this, it's going to be so overwhelming. But then they stopped.
Yeah.
It was just those 3 planets, and 2 of them you're only on for like, a couple minutes.
Yeah.
And then they completely focus in on just like 3 or 4 characters and the main story around Selden's calculations.
Yeah.
And then they just stick with that for the rest of the show. The acting was great. Jared Harris, the girl, Brother Day was good, I thought.
Yeah.
As like this like conniving empire guy. I don't know anything about the rest of the series. So I don't know if we like follow multiple timelines. I don't know if we're just gonna like keep jumping into the future.
Yeah.
Like as all this shit goes down. I have no idea. So I'm intrigued about that. It was also really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, like clearly this had a massive budget. It looked like a sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
From like a big studio. Like we talked about, great world building and just like sci-fi concepts that were, probably the first of its kind as far as I know. So yeah, I mean, it's difficult to do sci-fi well, as we've seen many, many times on this podcast.
Yeah. Often I'm like, this is terrible. Why even bother?
Yeah. And so this one looks to be well produced, well acted, well written. I'm intrigued. The reviews so far are pretty good. They're mostly 5s, and then and then it goes down like 4, 3, 2, and then there's a lot of 1s. And of course, if you read the 1s, it's people that are obsessed with the book series and say, "You changed this, fuck you, 1 star."
Oh God. So that's
which of course happens with this stuff like this. You know?
Yeah.
The something of all time, people are going to be pissed when you change it.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, and obviously we've only watched the pilot so far. I'm wondering if you take those people out of it, would the ratings be like super high?
Yeah. So I'll just say, we talked about our friend Aaron, who we wanted to come talk on this. We weren't able to schedule it, but when I was talking to him about it, he kind of described it. He loved the books. He thought they're doing a really good job with this. Obviously, they did change some things, but he said in his mind, it was one of those things where, they talked about making it a show or a movie, and it's like something that you think they could never do. Like they could never get it right because it's like, and he was like, it's like Game of Thrones. It's just like too complex. You never think that they'd be able to get it right. But like Game of Thrones did it. And like, that's how he was like kind of like describing this. Like they're actually like doing a good job. Yeah. And he said they did change things because when it was written in the 40s, like everybody was white. And so they kind of did change that with some characters and change the genders of certain characters and stuff.
Oh, I'm sure there's pieces of shit online giving it a 1.
That's
just
probably
for that
what they don't like, because they think that the character Gail is probably supposed to be some white kid.
right.
But it's, so I thought that was an interesting perspective of someone who really loved the books and also,
Yeah.
is enjoying this series.
Yeah, I read something like the books are very high concept, like, taking a wider view of like society. Whereas like for a TV show, you need to have characters that you are attached to. Like you said, they did a good job of that.
Yeah.
So like they have to change things that way to turn this into
Right.
something filmed.
Yeah. I did have one question. Who was the guy that she was talking to on her trip? Like she did like the jump with him and then she was also on the elevator with him and then she sees him later.
I think that he's basically a spy for the Empire.
Oh, so he is like maybe a bad guy.
I think so, or at least in some way connected. Like, I think...
I guess that's like reductive to be like, oh,
Yeah.
good guy, bad guy. But
Yeah.
like...
So of course the Empire found out about this girl, and so they sent him to like watch over her and like dig into her background, and then he came to her cell later to like give her the calculations to look at them. And he like kind of warned her like, if you say this, Harry dies. If you say this, you die. So you better think really hard about if you're going to agree with his calculations.
Yeah. They seem to have like some kind of a connection. Like she trusts him a little bit on the journey there.
Yeah.
But maybe she's just like, she's also just so excited because she doesn't think she's in trouble and doesn't think she's going to she's just so excited to be getting off of her planet.
I think it was
So,
more of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
He just like let her open up to him a little bit.
Yeah.
And, he even finds out.
Obviously naive, never going anywhere and like.
Right. Yeah, he reveals later like that he knows that she came out of hyperspace sleep.
Yeah.
So like, how did he find that out? Obviously the Empire just knows everything.
Right.
So yeah, I thought it was a good pilot. I recommend it if you're into sci-fi at all. Elizabeth's not, so she's not going to continue to watch.
Yeah.
That's fine.
But I still recommend it if you are into this because I think it was good.
Yeah. I'm going to continue, I think. I don't really have any shows right now that I'm just watching by myself.
Yeah.
So I'm going to continue. I was going to try to convince you otherwise, but I don't need to.
Well, there's that other show that we had just watched, Why the Last Man.
Yeah.
And one of our listeners, Maggie, she like sent me a message and like after like we talked about that and she was like, she had read everything and hold on, let me see if I can find the message actually.
Yeah. Why the Last Man is getting very mixed reviews.
Oh, are they mixed?
And I've read some of them. It's so hard to tell online because there's not a ton of reviews. So if there's a bunch of low ones, it really brings it down. And a lot of people are like, why is the hero like so dumb and like sniveling and all that other stuff? And then other people are like, that's why it's interesting because he's not just like some big dicked, big muscled guy who's going around like saving the world. Like that's why it's a unique story. So who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's handled well or not. I would like to find out because I think it's such an interesting concept.
Yeah. So Maggie, not my sister Maggie, a different Maggie. But she and her fiance, shout out, congrats, listen all the time. And so she said, I just listened to Why the Last Man app of the podcast, and I both read the graphic novel in college, so it's been a bit, and watched 3 episodes of the show so far, and I really love it. It gets really, really interesting in talking about how the world will rebuild, a must watch for feminists, in my opinion.
Oh, cool.
So I said,
Well-
all right, you twisted my arm, but we still haven't gotten to it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I trust her opinion more than a bunch of dopes online. So.
Yeah, me too. That's why I was like, all right,
Yeah. Cool. All right. Any other thoughts on Foundation?
No.
Any other disparaging marks against Jared Harris?
I like Jared Harris.
I'm just kidding.
I was just kind of like, once I saw that it was like, he was like the super smart guy who knew everything, but was being doubted and not being able to like, no one was like trusting him because someone wanted to put him down. Like, I was like, oh, right. Yeah. Jared Harris is playing this guy.
He does it really well.
He does. You're so defensive. What if, should I say something about Dark next? Dark was kind of stupid.
Fucking dare.
Oh my God, that was really intense, Phil.
All right, everybody. If you have suggestions on shows for us to watch, you can email us at trialbypilot@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at trialbypilot. And please go on to Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you're listening to this. Subscribe to the show, leave a review, and tell a friend.
And thank you to the Beats for providing our theme music.
Thank you, Beats.
Bye.
Bye.
Watching television, watching television. Watching television.